Hello, my name is PPCC, and I hope you guys enjoy the first ever Allied Core AAR. Inside this video, we'll be playing the D-Day scenario presented inside the game. We have the objectives of capturing Cherbourg, St. Lo, Caen, and the bridgehead located here in 23 turns. We'll start off by dropping some troops onto the bridgehead. We want to capture Pegasus Bridge first and foremost, and we'll follow that up by deploying all of the first wave of infantry onto the shores of Normandy. Afterwards, we'll move in the rest of the landing craft carrying various different tanks and artillery units. I want to try to space these out so that the bunkers located on the shores cannot attack these landing craft, as they are fairly vulnerable. Next up, we'll have to drop off the 82nd and the 101st in the marshy area around Caen. Following that, we need to prepare for the landings by dropping off some munitions onto the various bunkers and different emplacements. Let's get our bunkers to go up here and drop their payloads on the various different bunkers in our way. Soften them up for the ground troops. Unit health is represented by the number below each single unit. Typically, units are at maximum health when they reach 10 points, although units can be stacked as an overstrength to give them an advantage early game in the deployment phase. In our case, the D-Day landings were obviously a deliberate operation, so our units come overstacked. As we end our turn, the German troops defending the beachhead gets their turn to retaliate and return fire onto our landing force. It looks like we're getting hit pretty hard by their bunkers. With the first turn over, we can start moving our units to the second turn. I want to be able to destroy as many units as possible during the early phase of this operation. Inside the marshes over here, I'll use the 101st and the 82nd to eliminate as many of these enemy infantry squads as possible. I don't want these infantry squads coming back later on to haunt us. Here, our airborne troopers are able to get quite a few nice shots off of the enemy infantry and as well as an enemy artillery piece. A little farther east, our troops are still working on their way off the beaches. We're clawing through most of the bunkers alright. We're getting through their first line of defenses. It looks like the Germans are reinforcing their positions with a few infantry squads that should be handled fairly easily by my bombers. Allied Corps uses a unique victory system for its campaign. There are essentially two different types of victories. In theory, we could only go for the standard victory and go for 2 out of the 4 objectives present. Or we could go for all 4 and win what is essentially a decisive victory, which will allow us to progress into another path on the overarching campaign. I'm going for a decisive victory, so I'm going to move fast, and I'll try to avoid hitting anything that I don't need to necessarily destroy. We mustn't waste our strength in this scenario if we are to get a decisive victory after all. Alright, now that our armored forces have landed, it is time to push up to our objectives. We'll be going for Cherbourg inside the north over here with a mixture of rangers, airborne infantry, and various artillery pieces. Because this area is largely bocage, it'll be fairly easy to advance with artillery and infantry. You'll see here that our infantry was able to do heavy damage to the enemy's assault guns over there. Near the south here, we'll send a small party to deal with the Fallschirmjäger infantry inside Caen, and later on these troops will also advance onto St. Lo and probe the area. My plan is to essentially blitz the city of Caen. I want to take it over fast simply because the enemy, the Germans, will be getting reinforced with armored divisions in a little bit. If we only detach a small amount of forces to go for Caen, we may run into the problem of getting all of our units slaughtered there by the advancing armored troops. With the majority of the Axis forces off of the beaches now, we can focus on actually advancing into the actual city. Note that advancing into urban tiles with anything short but a large majority of infantry in conjunction with artillery is a very, very bad idea. Flanking attacks inside Allied Corps is represented by multiple units moving and essentially surrounding one single target. In order to take the urban tiles inside Caen, we'll be using a mixture of artillery which suppresses enemy things and turns the little hit points number either a shade of yellow or red, indicating that the unit is suppressed, and we'll also be using this flanking, or rather combined firepower technique to take over the city. I'm going to get our boats to approach the shore and really provide support for our ground troops. At first I was thinking about moving my tanks around towards into the southern area and pushing out from there, though since we have Pegasus Bridge, I am going to be moving the heavier tanks such as the Sherman Fireflies across the Pegasus Bridge, the one that we control with British paratroopers right now, so that we can counter the soon coming Panthers and elite German infantry. Near Cherbourg, we make quite a little bit of progress and identify a enemy fixed emplacement and some flak batteries. In our drive to St. Lo, we notice that the enemy has left one of his mobile AA vehicles there. Anyways, the bulk of our forces will still be moving into the Caen area over here. I get my tanks to try to pick off their Panzer IVs immediately. Because there is quite a lot of bocage territory in that general area, we were able to use our infantry too. I'll get my Sherman mine clear to clear out some of the mines in our route of advance, so that the troops in the back will have an easier time advancing into this direction. The first half of Caen follows after a prolonged series of artillery and combined, or rather flanking maneuvers put by infantry units such as here. If we move 2 to 3 units into an adjacent tile of an enemy unit, the first shot gets a bonus in the sense that because the other 2 units have not fired, the game abstracts those 2 shots as being a combined arms attempt, therefore lowering the amount of casualties received. So long as we move units that have yet to fire into the adjacency of my enemies and use a different unit to fire, we gain a bonus to our attack essentially. While our drive into Caen is fairly successful at the moment, I will be buying a few artillery pieces and some more Sherman tanks to support our effort there. Once the Germans show up with heavy armor, we might run into a few problems. And we have to keep in mind that we do have to hold Pegasus Bridge and not allow it to change hands during the entirety of the mission. It looks like the Germans brought their armor earlier than I had anticipated. You see that they brought a few Panthers and a few Panzer IVs with them. Those were some pretty heavy tanks, and since I only have one Sherman Firefly over there, they could in theory use that same flanking / combined arms tactic that we did. The start of turn 5 is marked with our cleaning operations inside Caen. Since the enemy has driven his one of his Panzer IV divisions into the bridge at Caen, we'll try to eliminate that right off the bat, seeing as how divisions crossing rivers have a defensive penalty. I want to be able to eliminate those armored units as fast as possible because those will be causing us the greatest amount of grief. Get our flamethrower crocodile to, or flamethrower Churchill to burn out some of the infantry, and I'll get some of the heavier Sherman tanks to try to move across the river. Meanwhile, our attempts at pressing into Cherbourg are being hindered by the oddness of the terrain over here, and the fixed emplacements in Cherbourg's defensive line. The Bocage country is very difficult to move in, though as soon as we reach the defensive emplacements, our airborne infantry should be able to clear them out fairly easily. Now that the AI has control over heavy armor, their turns become very potent. There's not a lot of cover near Pegasus Bridge, so our infantry there, or rather the British commandos there, will be at quite a bit of risk. We'll need to get our Sherman Fireflies to cross that river immediately and take the fight to those Panthers. I'll try to get some support in the form of suppression from our artillery and from our ships. I believe we can also bring in some air power, provided that there are no flak guns or enemy aircraft around the area. Though moving from Pegasus Bridge and into the rear area behind Caen is a viable way to press forward the offensive, I'm actually thinking of crossing the river south of our side of Caen. You may have noticed that there are 2 German artillery pieces there. If we can just simply cross into those tiles, I mean, they can't really put up much of a fight in terms of dealing with tanks now, can they? It would appear as though they don't have very much on the southern side of Caen either. So I believe that if we were to get these tanks across, they could actually do quite a lot of damage. I think I'll pursue this route and essentially try to close the little gap around Caen from both sides. Meanwhile, on our press to Cherbourg, our infantry have been able to get right up nice and close to the fixed emplacements and do quite a lot of damage to that. Our bombers here are actually quite effective at taking down a variety of different targets, and they have been of great use in taking down the various different obstacles that we have been faced over here. For example, in taking out this unit, or this Hetzer, these bombers are actually capable of dropping itself by half, whereas our infantry are barely able to scratch the thing. We're fairly close to Cherbourg now, but the problem that remains is the fact that they still have 2 major coastal batteries from the looks of it. More notably, they have 15th points, or hit points. That's quite a little bit. On turn 7, we were really able to press the offensive near Caen. We were able to actually move our tanks across the river and put some troops on their side of the river. In addition, you may have noticed that the enemy has moved a elite Panzer or Panther division onto the middle hex inside the city, one that is vulnerable to our infantry. Well, that's one Panzer brigade down, and it looks like there's actually a second one positioned inside the river here. So let's put some suppression fire on it. Let's see if we can take it out with one of our fireflies. I'm going to move my tank out of the river first because when attacking from bridges and river hexes, no matter what position they are, it does suffer a penalty. Though the German unit did move into the Pegasus Bridge hex, since it was a retreat movement, it did not actually capture the hex, so I believe we are still able to continue with our objective of accomplishing that decisive victory. I believe the objectives were that hex, that Pegasus Bridge hex, needs to stay into our control, and seeing as how the flag never changed on it, I think we're fine. Our infantry are really getting chewed up on the eastern side of Caen. There's not a lot of cover, no hills, no forests, no bocage country for our infantry to fight out of, so they're taking quite a lot of losses from the heavy German tanks. Our progress on turn 8 in the Cherbourg area was also quite remarkable. We were able to use our bombers and infantry to great effect by silencing the guns. I'm going to try to isolate the infantry inside the town before doing anything. You may have noticed that when we attack in the range of enemy artillery, the artillery gets a free shot on us before the attack starts. So, with that said, with the 2 guns here, that'll be quite a lot of firepower coming down onto our troops either way, and I'd rather not have them pummel our troops. While the fronts on Caen and Cherbourg have been quite successful, the probe attempt onto St. Lo aren't going as well. Because there are still quite a few remnants of German infantry, whether divisions or brigades, around here, progress there has been fairly slow, though in the area of Caen we're still making quite a lot of progress, taking out various different enemy reinforcements as they show up on the map. With the expansion from the south going pretty well, we have a really good chance of actually encircling the city and just essentially breaking it from there. As soon as we've dealt with these annoying artillery pieces, things should become a lot simpler. Bouncing back up to Cherbourg, you'll see that now that the guns have been silenced, I can move my battleships and various different cruisers to assist our land forces. I'm going to get them to drop off quite a lot of bombardment into the city itself, and I'll get our infantry to start moving in. Note that we don't suffer very many casualties because we have all of these units positioned around that one particular squad. Likewise, I'll continue the assault in a similar manner, so long as they have that little red target symbol, meaning that they do have one attack available. We do get a bonus to the amount of, or rather like, we get a added defensive rating, so to speak, seeing as how our losses are considerably shortened when we attack with multiple units around one. At least our progress in near St. Lo is steady, though slow. We are still able to pick out one or two German troops here and there. Advancement in Caen, in the area around Caen, required a sacrifice of one of our tank units. The Germans still have 2 elite Panther units, so we still need to deal with them. It was a good thing that we got some solid hits on the tank, which managed to push it actually into the river. With the tank being inside the river, we were able to use our infantry to eliminate it. We can't allow very weak units to run away, simply because as soon as they pull out of the front, they will be able to reinforce themselves within the matter of one turn, and then they'll be back at full strength, so we do have to avoid that. Units, when they reinforce, come into the next turn being suppressed, as you may have seen here. 2 of the German infantry units have been recently reinforced, and because that they have been reinforced, they are now suppressed, so they make up very good targets of opportunity. But for now, I have a feeling that taking out the enemy's Panther tanks over here is a little more important, so we're going to have to deal with those first and foremost, and let's get the Sherman crab thing to hit one of the suppressed infantry groups. Eventually we capture Cherbourg, and with Cherbourg freed up, we were able to send some troops to St. Lo. With that being said, I decided to take a more aggressive stance near Caen. Since I have a lot of artillery in the region and a lot of infantry, I decided to mount an assault onto the eastern half of the city, dropping quite a lot of artillery units on top of these 2 hexes. I had wanted to fully suppress them, preferably fully suppress them, so that we may advance in there. Again, using that flanking attack, we were able to push the troops out, although at a fairly high price. With the capture of Cherbourg, you'll see here that on turn 13 I've begun to start to move the various different artillery pieces and infantry down here to our probing attempt at St. Lo. Near Caen, we've already broken the German infantry. Now it's simply just mopping up the various different remnants that still exist. Our Churchill Crocodile is particularly effective at clearing those 8 AT guns. With the city secure, I reinforce my troops here, and I begin to start shifting some units back across the bridges to St. Lo. Once St. Lo was reinforced by armor, the advance became much easier. Our infantry were able to advance forward now that the enemy artillery has been largely rendered ineffective. The collapse of Cherbourg came when some of the units from Caen were able to arrive, notably 3 different artillery pieces and a squad of infantry. Some of the airborne forces that did not have truck transport also arrived, and along with some bombers we were able to really push up into the St. Lo area. Now that St. Lo has been captured, once we end the turn, the mission will be over. I mop up the remaining little bit of infantry just to just kind of secure the area. So overall, it was a triumph, a decisive victory. I hope you guys enjoyed this AAR. Be sure to like and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
We've been held up in the bocage country of Normandy for almost 2 months now. The enemy has forced us to slug it out from one hedgerow to the next and made a joke out of our timetable. We've got to break out at last and get this campaign into high gear.